Guys follow them? No. Case in point. No, really, I understand you want to be comfortable, I get it, but also when you're a speaker up here and you see all the vacancy, but I appreciate you being here today. I'm just picking on you all a little bit this morning. Thank you very much for taking your Friday morning to be with us, and I know your response back to me is, well, you said mandatory, and I said mandatory for a reason. In case you're not aware, there are many of us here, and you're probably in that group, that are very passionate about young people and the work that we do for young people. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have seen, especially over the last 5 to 10 years, an evolution in the types of issues and problems that our kids are bringing with them to school. And those aren't just kid problems, they're family problems, they're community problems. And so the more we can understand and know about trauma and how that impacts human beings, the better off we're going to be. And I'm old school, so this is 29 years for me in Polk County. And when you say doing what's right for students, guys, that means something to me. And I know it means something to you guys. So thank you for taking your professional time to be here and to learn more and to grow in that particular arena, because I think it will benefit your students. Those strong relationships you have with them will pay off. And the more educated we can be about how to deal with trauma, how to deal with students who are in that space, how to recognize it, the better off we're going to be in serving them and serving their needs. So thank you for being here this morning. What's that next Friday do? How about a Friday with those students? Is that all right? As we talk about how much we love them. That's all right. That's all right. And I do hope you can get out of here at some point when we're done and put some life in your life. But I appreciate you giving your best. And we all are dedicated to giving our best this year. That's our theme. I want you to keep that in your mind as well. Again, I want to say a big thank you to Polk County Community Foundation for helping us sponsor this. Ms. Ronnie Dill and Ms. Lily Foster for helping get it all organized. And certainly want to say thanks to Polk County High School, Mr. Hall, Dr. Schweitzer and their tech team for getting all this done. We appreciate that. And Captain Harding would smack me in the back of the head if I didn't remind you, we do have flu shots after this. I know some people signed up for appointments, but you guys can just walk in if you haven't had an appointment. I think they'll still be able to feed you in there. So, I know how much y'all love to hear me talk, so I'm going to go ahead and get on to our presenter. Cheryl Fuller is with us today. She's an outstanding individual who is passionate about this work. She's a mother, a widow, and an educator living here in North Carolina. She grew up in Maine and used her education to create a path for her future with a bachelor's degree in child development and family relations and master's degrees in counseling and ed leadership. She spent her adult life as a teacher, counselor, principal, and professional development trainer. She became certified as a trauma specialist herself and works with others with help on healing their pain, to help them on their healing path. She experiences joy with her rescue fur babies, her son, time with family and friends, and being in or near the water as often as possible. It's her desire to use her experiences to help others find their potential for a life filled with joy and peace. We're fortunate to have her with us to share and inform. And if you will, please join me in giving a hearty Polk County Schools welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Cheryl Fuller.
So I am delighted to be here with you this morning. In fact, if there's one thing I know before we get started, I'm more delighted to be with you than you are with me. How do I know that? Because I know what your to-do list looks like. I know you have a million other things you could be doing, and it is my sincere commitment to make it worth your time so that when you walk out today, you don't say, well, that was a waste of 2 hours of my life. No, was it 2 or 6? Let's see. Which one? Oh, that's right. So who am I, and how do I have the honor to be with you? As he said, my name is Cheryl Fuller, and I am celebrating my 39th year in education this year. 39 years. It's hard to believe. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now, I know when you're looking at me, you're saying, 39? That doesn't look possible. That's right. I started when I was 2, and I'm sticking to that story, no matter what anybody says. I have had phenomenal experiences in my career, for sure, and some have been a little more challenging than others. I started my career in the beautiful state of Maine, where I grew up. And as a first-year teacher, of course, I was challenged as a beginning teacher. Where are our beginning teachers in the room? Raise your hand if you're, oh, please, let's give it up for our beginning teachers. We are so grateful that you decided to join the profession it's never been easier to do this job. Thank you for that. That's really good. So I was a beginning teacher, which is challenging. It was also challenging because it was a small country schoolhouse. So it literally had 4 classrooms and 1 restroom. That's the only thing that was in this building. A kindergarten, a first grade, a second grade, and my class, which was a combination 3rd and 4th. So I was challenged as a beginning teacher. I was challenged by having a combination class. But honestly, the biggest challenge was when I showed up on the first day, and they told me it was going to be part of my job responsibility to go out on the playground at recess time and get the cows off the playground. So they told me this, and I quickly went through my teacher preparation program for strategies on how to move cows around, and of course nothing came to mind. I was thankful for the experience because it prepared me well. Cows are very stubborn. And that was great training for some, no offense, Dr. Green, some superintendents, some principals, some people I might meet later in my life. My husband's job took us to beautiful Florida, and Jacksonville, Florida is where I had probably the most fun in my entire career. So Florida was good to me. It's where my son was born. It's where I earned a master's in guidance and counseling. It's where I earned my second master's in leadership. But the most fun I've ever had in my career was probably the first year I was teaching kindergarten. Now, I know you can't relate to that as high school teachers, but I actually love teaching kindergarten. And it was wonderful. I met who is now my very best friend 30 plus years later, who was also teaching kindergarten. Now, this was back in the days when the literacy specialist told us that in order to get children to learn how to read, we had to convince them that letters were people. And I know you remember this, because many of you went to school every week and you were introduced to a different letter person. You know, Harry H. or whatever it might be. So we came around with the letter X, and my friend Michelle said, hey, how about if we teach them the letter X by doing all of our lessons this week through exercise? I said, oh, that's an interesting idea. Now for Michelle, that was great for her because she's one of these crazy people that gets up at 4 in the morning and goes for a run before she goes and teaches all day. But for me, exercise has been a challenge. I've struggled with weight issues my whole life. And in fact, sometimes I've literally been hundreds of pounds heavier than I am right now. I probably was the heaviest I've ever been when I was teaching kindergarten because I defy any person in this room to spend all day in a classroom with 28 5-year-olds and not make chocolate your best friend. It's just not possible. So I was pretty heavy at the time, but I said, okay, I'll do it. Let's make it about exercise. So that week, every lesson we taught, we did through exercise, through push-ups, through sit-ups, through pull-ups. And by the time Friday came around, I was exhausted. So I got to introduce a new word. And some of the kids were too. One of the kindergartners was coming out of Michelle's classroom on a Friday, like today, Friday afternoon, ready to go home, and he had all this stuff with him. He had his backpack, he had a bunch of papers he hadn't bothered to put in the backpack. He had, this was back in the fun days when we would nap during kindergarten, so he had his napping pad and his lunchbox, and every time he took a step, he'd drop something. And he'd bend over and pick it up and take another step and drop something else. And you could see he was getting mad. His face was getting red. He was so frustrated. So I decided I was going to go over and help him out, and I was going to make it a teachable moment at the same time. So I walked over to him and I said, wow, that looks like hard work. He said, it is hard work. I can't carry all this stuff. I said, I know it's hard, but just imagine how much your body is appreciating the exercise you're doing. He stood up, he dropped every single item to the floor, he looked up at me and he said, well then you carry it because it looks like your body would appreciate it even more. You gotta love those teachable moments when you're the one that gets taught something. Yeah, so my husband's job then moved us to upstate New York. Is anybody from the upstate New York area? Where are you from? Oh, upstate, where, what part? Oh, Buffalo, yeah. So another one back there? Yes, okay. So I was in the Syracuse, New York area. You're going to appreciate this story. So that was probably my most challenging year of my career. I was a first-year principal. That's obviously a challenge. But what made it even more challenging is that it was a large elementary school of 1,300 children. Now, for high schoolers, you guys are used to big numbers, but elementaries are not usually 1,300. What made it even more challenging was that I was following a principal, a man who had been principal in this building for 40 know no one but this man in this community for 42 years, and in walks this young female to her first principalship. But believe it or not, folks, that wasn't even the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge was the 194, you heard that number correctly, 194 inches of snow that fell the first year I was there. So you know what happens here in the mountains when you get 3 or 4 inches. Multiply that until you get to 194. So they get a couple inches of lake effect snow off Lake Ontario every day like clockwork. And we get some really big storms coming in. So we went home, we came to work one Friday morning, and the buzz was all about the storm that was coming in over the weekend, and everyone was sure we were going to have a snow day on Monday. At 9 o'clock, my secretary says, the superintendent needs you to give him a call. So I called him up and he said, you know that storm that's coming in off the Great Lake this weekend? It's moving faster than we thought. So we need to do an early dismissal at 1 o'clock. I said, okay, no problem. 9:30, my secretary says, the superintendent needs you to give him a call. Call up the superintendent, he says, you know, that storm is moving even faster than we thought. We need to dismiss at 10 o'clock this morning. I said, okay, we're nothing if we're not flexible in education, right? So 10 o'clock rolls around, it's already started snowing a little bit, I go up. Now, if you're going to dismiss 1,300 children, you do that in rotations of 12 or 13 buses at a time. You load them up, send them out, then do another 12, etc. So I go up there and I loaded up the first couple rotations of buses, and then my walkie-talkie blares, and my secretary says, the superintendent needs you to give him a call. I'm thinking, I can't get him out of here any faster than this. So I go in and I give him a call, and he said, well, you know the first round of buses that you sent out, 2 of the buses slid off the road. And I'm like, oh no, is everybody okay? And he said, yeah, there's no injuries at all, everything is fine, but it's not safe to keep dismissing students. I said, okay, so exactly what does that mean? He said, that means you need to keep those students until the storm passes. I said, well, do we have a sense of when that's going to be? And he said, probably about noon tomorrow. So you're going to need to keep the students there. He said, how many students do you have left in the building? I said, 800. He said, okay, well, you're going to need to spend the night with those 800 kids in your building. I'll call you later with a plan. And hangs up the phone. So I quickly went through my administrative preparation program for strategies on how to spend the night with 800 children in the building. And of course, nothing came to mind. We did make it through the night, but over the next few years, in spite of my numerous petitions to dry up the Great Lake, which nobody listened to, that weather just kept coming in every day. And I found myself at work. It was a Sunday afternoon. I had finished my church and family responsibilities in the morning, and I was working in my building in the afternoon, and the phone rang. And it was a recruiter from Beaufort, South Carolina, the Hilton Head Island community. They were opening a new elementary school, and one of my teachers had applied for a position. I said, they were calling to leave a message on the machine for the principal. I said, well, it just so happens that you caught the principal. So I went ahead, and I gave the teacher the positive reference that she had earned. And then, we started talking about the weather. Now, it's the 3rd Sunday in April, and he says that it's 88 and sunny outside of his window. And what do you think it's doing outside my house? It's still snowing. So, I hung up the phone, I faxed my resume, and they hired me as the new principal for that new elementary school. So we paid for me to answer the phone that day. I got to move to beautiful Beaufort, South Carolina. Now, my school was literally and figuratively on the opposite end of the county. So there's Hilton Head Island, and then there's my school, which was 99% free and reduced lunch, 99% African American. And I had a great opportunity to learn what I have said my whole life. Educators are the hardest working people I have ever met. No matter what field I look at, educators are by far the hardest working. And this example is going to prove that. I don't know about you, but if you've had experience with construction, it's never on time. Now, I very rarely use the word never, but I'm pretty safe with this one. When they're building something, it never works out on time. So they were adamant about getting this building open. The first time I was allowed into the building, or my staff, we all went into the building for the first time together at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, and our students arrived at 7:30 Monday morning. We had just over 24 hours to prepare for these kids getting there. My teachers stayed. When we walked into the building, it was nothing all the things that are not yet working or are broken or need to be fixed in your building. And my punch list for my building was 97 pages long, front and back. So we had some issues. In the first week of school, I was out checking out a couple of the issues outside. And one of my kindergartners was on top of the slide, getting ready to go down, and he spotted me coming outside. So he started waving at me, "Hey, Miss Fuller." So I waved back, "Hey." And then he waved, "Hey." And I waved, "Hey." And then he waved, "Hey." Because if you know kindergartners, that's going to go on for about 3 hours if you let it. But he seemed really adamant about getting my attention. Miss Fuller, did you see our new pet alligator?" I'm thinking this case ought to be good. I said, "What alligator is that?" "The one under the slide." This child was about to go down a slide. Sleeping underneath was a 19-foot, 70-year-old alligator. It's okay. I quickly went through my administrative preparation for the alligator, and of course nothing came to mind. In about 30 minutes, I had all these picketers all over my campus, "Save the alligator! Save the alligator!" And all I could think of, can we save the 5-year-old? How would we save that? My husband wasn't able to find work anymore. I said, "You find work, I'll follow you. They have schools everywhere, but let's try to avoid the snow." And that's when we landed in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So I went from 99% free and reduced lunch, 99% African American, to being a principal in Chapel Hill. Great opportunity, very different experience for sure. I might make the argument that there's a few alligators swimming around there too, just a little better disguised perhaps. I had a great opportunity there, but I wanted to go where I felt more needed. I went to an inner city school in Durham. While I was in Durham, I was approached by the Department of Public Instruction in Raleigh to come and work in their Office of Professional Development. I said yes, and I'm desperately hoping you don't hold it against me for the rest of the day. Went to work for DPI. It was at the time when they were rolling out your new evaluation instruments for principals and for teachers. And at that point, my world sort of blew up. So 14 years ago, the day before Thanksgiving, my husband of almost 25 years went to the doctors for a cough that he couldn't get rid of. And by the end of that day, they had diagnosed him with stage 4 lung cancer. It came as a real shock because he was not a smoker. And to our knowledge, the only symptom he had was this cough. It was the Thanksgiving weekend, and there wasn't really much they could do. So on Monday, after the holiday was over, they did a full body scan and found that it had already spread in his body, and he had 14 tumors in his brain. They gave him a life expectancy of 1 year, and he died 10 weeks later. Now for me, it was devastating. For my son, who was a freshman at Appalachian State University, I drove until 10 o'clock last night just for that noise right there. Thank you very much. They don't do that to me on the East Coast when I say App State. My son was a freshman at App State. He withdrew his freshman year, came home. We were both able to be with my husband when he passed. And then I needed some healing time, and DPI did not have a part-time option. So I resigned from DPI, and after a few months of healing, I was going to go back to being a principal, but individual schools and districts reached out and said, "We know you don't work for the state, but could you please still provide training, and we'll hire you as an independent consultant." And that's where my consulting work started, and that's what brings me to you today. You see, when I was first doing my work, I strongly believe that the teacher evaluation instrument and the principal evaluation instruments are very strong tools to increase student and teacher performance if they're trained properly. But they're often not. They're often just handed to people. This is your evaluation, and it becomes a checklist. So what I ended up doing, because I do believe teachers are the hardest working people I know, and I don't think it's fair to ask to be evaluated on something that we haven't shown you how to do. So what I ended up doing, you have 35 different behaviors in your teacher evaluation instrument. I put together a training that's tied to every one of them. So if you don't know how to do diversity, standard 2, element B, there's a training you can go to. If you're not sure about standard 4, element E, critical thinking, there's a training you can go to. And for many years, I did that work. But then I was noticing a problem. And the problem I was noticing was in standard 2. Now standard 2 for you is all about the environment and the relationships with our students. And what I was noticing was not that teachers weren't trying. Teachers are trying every single day. But the needs of the kids that are showing up on our doorstep are far greater than anything anyone ever prepared us for. It is through the roof what our children and our families are needing now. And teachers have not been given the tools to be able to do that. So it's my goal today to try to make your job just a little bit easier, give you a couple more tools for that toolbox to help you deal with the tremendous amount of needs that you're facing every single day. So you with me? You want to get started? All right, let's jump in. So I would make the argument that trauma has never been more important for us to consider. A lot of people around here, legislators, school board members sometimes, etc., both locally, at the state level, and across the United States, are trying to make the argument that teachers should not be paying attention to social emotional learning. They don't need to worry about trauma. What they need to know is their content. And I will argue until I have no more breath in my body that you cannot separate out those two things. You see, the primary focus of our brain, the primary reason you have a brain, as educators, we think it's for learning, but in reality, it's not for learning. The primary reason we have a brain is to allow you to have a body that is designed to last 70 to 90 years. The purpose of the brain is to keep that body comfortable, safe, healthy. And when that does its job, its primary job, then and only then will it release the chemicals that that child needs for learning. So if the child is too hungry, if the child is too angry, if all of this trauma is going on for these children, the brain is not even releasing chemicals. You can teach them biology for 4 hours and they're not going to get a word of it because the brain does not release the chemicals they need. The brain's first job has to be sure that they're in a comfortable state. So I'm going to introduce to you 4 factors that will create a trauma response in people. And you don't need to worry about taking a lot of notes. If there's anybody that wants the PowerPoint after, Lily, I'm happy to share it with you. Okay? So there are 4 factors that will create a trauma response in people. The first is when we break our connections to other people. Now that can happen for positive reasons. Maybe you changed jobs, you retired, etc., but you still left behind connections to other people that you knew, and that can create a trauma reaction. Or it could be for more challenging reasons: a separation, a divorce, a change in schools, a death, etc. The second factor that can create a trauma response is when our routine and structure for how we live our life gets significantly disrupted. Now, I know who I'm talking to here, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of grace on this one, because I know what your day is like. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, your routine and structure has already been disrupted at least 12 times. So you become pretty resilient to this. But for the average person out there, when our routine and structure gets disrupted, it can create a trauma response. The third factor that can create a trauma response is when the expectations that we have get disrupted. Now that could be the expectations of other people around us, but the one we often forget is when the systems that are built to support our life get disrupted. So for example, the system of education. We know how to do education. We get up every morning, we go to school to learn. No, not now. Now you're going to learn from home for a little while. The healthcare system that we count on for answers suddenly might be confused. They might have different advice every day because things are changing so quickly. Even your government, if your government is not doing what you expect it to be doing, it can create a trauma condition when those expectations don't happen. And the fourth and final factor that will create a trauma reaction in people is when your safety, your health, your life is threatened, or the health, safety of life of your loved ones is threatened. That will create a trauma reaction. Now I want you to take a look at look at those and tell me which one was disrupted by the pandemic. Oh, Linda, you gave me the gifted girl. Thank you so much. You are exactly right. Every single one of those was disrupted by the pandemic, and that's what makes trauma different now than before. Historically, trauma was about you identifying an individual who might need extra support. This family's going through divorce. This family had a fire. This family is battling medical illness. But who is it that's gone through the pandemic? Everyone. So trauma, every single person is either healing from or still experiencing a trauma reaction as a result of what has happened to us. Every student in your classroom, every colleague in your building, every single one of you has experienced or is still experiencing a trauma reaction. So it makes trauma very different than what it used to be. Now, I have the good fortune to do this work in a lot of locations. I actually do year-long studies on trauma, what that looks like, etc. And if you were to go to my training, I would teach you literally dozens of strategies that you can use when you're dealing with trauma, when it's happening right in front of you, or when the person you're working with has a history of trauma, because they do relationships differently. But should you not attend my training, should you sleep through my training, I'm going to show you today 4 things that will immediately begin to help and heal the trauma we've all been going through. Are you curious as to what those are? Please say yes. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. So what are the 4 factors that heal trauma right there? Yeah, exactly. I did not forget to put this slide. The very 4 factors that put us into trauma are our ticket out of trauma. So if you're struggling in your school coming back from the pandemic, take a look at which one of these might need a little more attention. Because when we rebuild connections, when we put the relationship out there first, when we get a new set of expectations that we can rely on that's been communicated to everyone, when we have a new routine and structure, it might not look like the old one, but when it's there and solid and we can count on it, when we have put everything we can in place to protect safety, whether it's vaccines, masking, social distancing, whatever it is, we will begin to heal from our trauma. Now, we are actually coming out of the pandemic long enough now for there to be some research around these factors. And one of those factors heals trauma faster and more efficiently than all of the others. One of them is going to give you more bang for the buck when you give it attention. You want to guess which one it is? Oh, they are so gifted. Thank you. It is all about the connection to other people, folks. It's all about the relationship. So no matter what strategies I give you today, the foundation of all of it is going to come back to the relationship piece. Okay? Now, when I do trauma training, I am not a theorist. I am very practical. I don't want to waste teachers' time. So I always talk in reality, not in speculation. So I use real cases of trauma when I'm talking about trauma. So I want you to remember to take care of yourself. Because when you hear about other people's traumas, our body absorbs it, our brain takes it in, and we feel it too. So as we talk about trauma today, I want you to remember to take nice deep breaths. If you need to mentally go visit your summer vacation, go ahead and do that. If you're making eye contact with me, I'm not even going to know, so go ahead. And if you have to step out, then step out. But I want you to take care of yourself as we talk. So I'm going to share with you, I've always been one of these people that wants to try to stay as current as I can. I never want to be an educator who hasn't been in a classroom in 30 years. So I usually keep a part-time job in the school district along with my consulting work. I've been very fortunate that my consulting work has really taken off. So as of June 30th, it's the first time I'm not actually employed in a district. But for the last 5 years, I was in Franklin County, outside of Raleigh, and I had a part-time job there where I wore 3 hats. The first hat I wore was I was the ESSA foster care point of contact. So when children had to move around because they were in foster care, I would secure stability in their schooling. The second hat I wore was the hospital homebound coordinator. So if children couldn't go to school for medical reasons, I secured services for them at home. Now, if you want to see the program that went through the roof post-pandemic, it's that one. Because you have many local pediatricians out there that are more than happy to write a note saying this child is too anxious, too depressed to go to school now. And that's a concern, because what does the research tell us we need to heal? Connections to others, okay? The third hat I wore was the McKinney-Vento homeless liaison for children that are in unstable housing. So I want to share with you an example, a case study of a child that ended up in a homeless situation. This child was born into a family with a mother and a father and 4 children. And all of the children in the family were being abused and neglected. But one of the children was especially hated by the father because she was a girl, and she became the primary target of his abuse. Over the course She had over a dozen broken bones. She had over 100 stitches and multiple surgeries. The sexual abuse started with her father when she was 5 years old and started kindergarten, and it continued until she got pregnant at 11 and had an abortion. The emotional abuse for this child included many forced instances of animal cruelty, and most importantly, between the ages of 5 and 9, almost every weekend, when she got home from school on Friday, she was locked in the basement of their home and not let out again until it was time for school on Monday. Minimal food and water, minimal stimulation, etc. And then, when she was 15 years old, the parents divorced, and they drove away in 2 separate vehicles, literally leaving her standing on a street corner with a small suitcase, and she became homeless at that point in time. So you have children that have less trauma than this, you have children that have more trauma than this, but I want to use this child as our conversation point this morning. So I want you to answer with somebody near you. And if you're not sitting near anyone, that means you're going to have to move down the aisle just a little bit, okay? I want you to answer 2 questions. The first question I want you to answer with your partners is, what do you think this child might be like when she shows up at school? Either as an elementary school student, when all those things were going on with her, or later when she's homeless. What do we think she's going to be like socially and emotionally? What's her attendance going to be like? What about her academics? Just do your best predicting of what you think this child might be like in school. And then I'm going to move you over to the second question. And the second question is, if research tells us the most important thing we can do for this child is the relationship we have with them during the day, what's it going to be like when you start trying to build a relationship with someone with this kind of history? Okay? Now, I made sure, I checked with Lindley, every single person in here has a caring, compassionate heart. Well, except for those 2, are they here? No, I'm just kidding. Everybody's here. So as a result, you're going to want to start with the second question. You're going to want to jump into the relationship. But I'm going to ask you to start with the first question. And then I'll move you to the second question in just a couple minutes, okay? So the first question, what do you think she's going to be like? Socially, emotionally, academically, attendance. Have that dialogue with someone near you for just a minute, please. now we can't say all those bad things we were going to say about the other levels. I'll be careful. I'll be careful. Now let's take a look at these two questions. So the first question, what do we think this child might be like in school, socially and emotionally? Shout out a word. What do you think? Okay, I heard a couple. Withdrawn. She might be very withdrawn. One of the things that we know about the human body is that when it is faced with stress and trauma, remember what I told you the number one job of the brain is? To protect your body. So when it's faced with trauma, it goes inward. It retreats. It keeps you safe from whatever's going on. We learned that through COVID because we sent everyone home for COVID. You sent all your kids home, and guess what? Some of them didn't want to come back. We sent all of you home, and guess what? Some of you didn't want to come back. So we know that the body tends to do that. So if this child is being locked in the basement or is homeless by herself as a teenager, it's a very good possibility when she comes to school, she is withdrawn, just stays to herself. Is there an opposite to that that could be true? Yes, absolutely. She could be attention-seeking. She could be attention-seeking in a positive way, where she becomes a people-pleaser. She wants the attention of the teacher, so she's really good in school. It could be she becomes the class clown because she likes to have the kids laugh at her. Or attention-seeking in a negative way, where there's outbursts, there's anger, there's all the emotions that isn't safe to put at home, she's bringing them to school. So you could see anywhere on the spectrum, really withdrawn, really aggressive, really people-pleaser, or anywhere in between. What about her attendance? Yeah, it could be very sporadic, especially if she's got a lot of physical injuries going on. Later, when she's homeless, she's saying, why do I want to go to school? I got to figure out where I'm going to sleep tonight. Is there an opposite to that that could be true? Yes. She could be in school every day that she can be, because she would rather be in school than in that home. She'd rather be in school than sleeping on the street corner. It's the safest, warmest place to be, so she gets herself to school every day that she can. So maybe she doesn't have. It could be that the parents want to be sure that she's in school every day, Monday through Friday, so nobody knocks on the door to ask what might be going on in that family. What about her academics? She could be struggling academically. It might be hard to get her brain to focus on geometry when she's trying to figure out where she's going to sleep, or on her spelling or language arts in the earlier years when she's worrying about what daddy's going to do to her when she gets home. So she could be suffering. There could be gaps in her learning. But is there an opposite to that that could be true? There is. She could have learned that when she does well in school, it garners the teacher's attention. She likes her better. And she wants that attention. So she works really hard for the teacher, to please the teacher. It could be she's terrified to take the wrong answer home to that house. So she makes sure she becomes almost a perfectionist. She could need to be able to focus on something other than the abuse she's suffering, and school becomes her focus. So she could be a very good student. So one of the things that I want to make sure we understand when we're trauma-informed is that our well-intended teacher preparation programs, counselor prep, administrative prep, all gave us nice little checklists of what trauma looks like. And I'm here to remind us that checklists don't work with trauma. Trauma is as individualized as every person in this room. So if a child is failing, if a child is having outbursts, if a child is not attending school, are those red flags that we need to pay attention to and investigate? Absolutely. But if those are the only children that we're checking out, that we're making connections to, that we're being interested in what's going on for them, it's very possible that we're missing some other children who need our support as well. So let's shift to the second question then. If we know from the research that the best thing we can do for this child is a relationship, what's it going to be like when you start trying to build a relationship with someone with this kind of trauma history? Yeah, it could be really challenging, right? She's probably not very trusting. She doesn't trust men for what's going on with their father. She might not trust women because she thinks her mom is allowing what's going on with her father. She might not trust anybody in the world, and that might make it really hard to build a relationship with her. But is there an opposite to that that could be true? Yes. You could be nice to her at 8 a.m., and now she's going to be on your doorstep every 10 minutes after that. She's found somebody safe and nice that she can connect to. So she is overly trusted. It could be she's seeking out men or women to fill in the gaps that she doesn't have at home. So she's trusting too much. It's very possible that even with the relationship, it's going to look like either extreme. But we do know this. We're pretty sure about this one thing, and that much more likely to be this. Things are going to be going along just fine, and then she's going to steal from you. She's going to lie to you. She's going to let all those feelings come out that can't come out at home, and she's going to cuss you out in front of everybody in the hallway. And then she's going to sit back and wait and see what happens to the relationship at that point in time. Is it over? Are you done with her? Etc. And what I'm hoping to do today is give you a few more pieces to help you keep that stable just a little bit longer, and maybe make those dips a little bit shorter. Give you the tools you need to be able to stick it out, even with those most challenging children who are showing us in various ways that they're in pain. And their easiest way to show you they're in pain is to cause you pain, so that you feel it too. And I want you to be able to see that that pain is a signal that they need you even more. Okay? So, the most important thing is the relationship piece. Now, they didn't tell you this. Dr. Green didn't mention this, and Linda didn't mention this, but I'm also a line reader. Yeah? I know that every one of you woke up this morning and said, "Oh, I'm so excited. I get to go to PD today. I'm really excited." And I know that when you were thinking about the PD you were going to, you said, "Oh, I hope the presenter does a personality inventory with me." Yay, congratulations, your wish just came true. So none of that's true. I'm not a mind reader, and I know you weren't feeling that way this morning, but I'm going to ask you to hang with me. How many of you have ever done the Myers-Briggs? Good, we're not doing that. It's a wonderful instrument, but it takes about an hour to do, and then you spend your whole life saying, was I an E, an F, a T, a P, whatever. So we're going to do something much simpler. It's only going to take you about 5 minutes to do, and it might be one that you've also done before. But we just identified that the pandemic has had an impact on all of us. Plus, we grow and change over time. So if you've done this before, I'm going to ask you to do it again with an open mind and see if you come out the same or you might have changed a little bit. Now, what I know, because I was a teacher for many years, is that I'm smart enough not to hand this out to you until I go over the directions. So, we are going to do what is called a True Colors inventory. I am a certified True Colors trainer out of California. So the first thing I need to tell you is that should you want to do this, it is a phenomenal activity. Should you want to do it with your students, with your church group, a social group, you are welcome to do so, but it is a copyrighted program. So none of the materials I give you today can be copied. If you want to do it with someone, you have two options. You can call the company in California who will happily bill you $2,000 to be able to do this activity. Or you can reach out to me. You'll have my contact information. I am not allowed to give it away because of my certification, but I am allowed to do it at the most minimal cost possible, which is $1 per person. So if you have 40 students, it would cost $40 to do it, etc. So please respect my certificate and know that you cannot copy any of the materials I'm going to give you today. Okay? Having said that, this is what it looks like. I know you can't even see it back there, but I'm still going to use it as my reference point. Okay? This piece of paper has a lot of words on it, and it can be intimidating, but the good news is you're only working with one row at a time, okay? There are 5 rows on this paper. In each row, there are 4 boxes, and in each box are 3 words and a letter of the alphabet. So the first row is A, B, C, D, second row, E, F, G, H, etc. Your job is to put a number next to the letter of the alphabet. The number is going to be either a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. So every row on your paper is going to have a 1, 2, 3, 4 in that row. How do you know what number to put in the box? You read 3, 6, 9, 12, all 12 words. You're not rating the individual words, you're rating the whole box of words. You find the box that you think best describes you as a person, and you give that the highest number, which is a 4. The only way to mess this up is to do it backwards. So the highest number is most like you, okay? Then you look at the 9 remaining words, the 3 boxes you have left. Which box best represents you? Now your highest number left is a 3. Then you have 2 boxes. Most like you gets a 2, leaving you with a 1. That should be the words that least represent you as a person. Now, if you're a person that doesn't like to follow rules, and I've already identified you when you came in, you would not sit down here, even though your superintendent asked you to. You can do it in reverse order if you want to. You can start with the 1 least like you and work your way up. I don't transfer it down, etc. Then, toughest part of the entire training, and I know it's Friday, you're going to add a cross on the row. The good news is the numbers are not that big. They're not any higher than 1, 2, 3, or 4. However, because it is a Friday, there's no judgment. If you want to get your cell phone calculator out, you're welcome to do it. Okay? When you are done, you are likely to have one color that is higher than all of the others. There's a possibility that the highest color might tie with 2 colors. If you should have 2 colors tied for your highest color, that means you're crazy. You might be crazy, but I'm not going to be able to tell from this. So, what I want you to do when you're done with your color is, done with your assessment, is flip your paper over, and on the back, put in a very large letter the first letter of your highest color. So if your highest color is a blue, you're going to put a giant B. If your highest color is an orange, you'll put a giant O. And should you be one of those people with a tie, you would do B/Y, whatever it might be. Okay? Don't worry about other colors underneath, just your highest is what we're going to focus on today. Now, as you're passing them out, I'm going to tell you a couple. You can start. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to mention 2 other things. One, I promised your superintendent we would be done by 7 p.m. And I'm going to stick with that. So please don't get stuck, okay? Go with your gut. 2, please remember this. You cannot move the words around. You can't change a word from one box to another. 3, if you happen to be sitting with your very best friend, this is not their opportunity to tell you who they think you are. You are going to do this individually and privately, okay? Tech person in the booth. Hold on 1 second, folks. Can you give me any more light in the auditorium? Some of the people are struggling with seeing the paper. Can you turn the lights up just a little bit?
That's all we got.
I'm sorry?
It's all we got.
It's all you got? Okay. If you need to move to more light, feel free to move underneath one of the lights.
Sorry. So there's 1, 2, and the third one is all the way down. You have to pull it up. So
Oh, right here. Dr. There's plenty of them.
it's gonna wash the screen
If
out.
you need a writing utensil, raise your hand. He's coming around with it.
One more line.
For now.
Yeah. Oh, they're working.
You can read this. You're not supposed to really see this when it's doing this. Which one?
Raise your hand if you need either a writing utensil or an assessment. You need a writing utensil?
40
Right
here.
over here, please, Dr. Green. Thank you.
14
Anyone else
gigs
need a
in
writing
person.
utensil or an assessment? Okay, that's our cue then, that we're going to stop talking and let everyone concentrate.
I mean, that, we can take it right. That's what I got.
So now we're going to do this without talking, please. Thank you. Some of these are big words, and people need to be able to concentrate.
She, she, it's crazy.
Okay, just a couple more minutes, and I know when you finish, you want to start talking. But remember, this is the hard part, where your colleagues are adding up those really big numbers. So let's just stay quiet if we can for a couple more minutes, please. When you look across your four numbers, if you have two colors that are 12 or more points apart, so when you look at your four numbers, if any two of them are 12 or more points apart, you can come up after the session and congratulate me because I just identified who's stressing you out in your life. However, if your numbers are fairly close together, you find it a little easier to get along with those other colors that are close to you. So let's do a little room inventory. First of all, do I have any people that are tied, that are crazy? I mean tied, sorry. All right? Well, if your highest color is a tie, look how many we have. We have a lot, so it does not mean you're crazy. So if you have a tie for your highest, I'm not worried about the other lowers, but if your highest one is a tie, when I say both or all three of your colors that you're tied with, you'll raise your hand each time. Okay? So let's do a little inventory. I want you to look around the room when we do this. Raise your hand if your highest color is green. Okay? So we got maybe 8, 10, maybe 12 at the most, all right? Raise your hand if your highest color is orange. All right? Got a fair number of those, probably about half a dozen or so. Raise your hand if your highest color is blue. Yeah, definitely have some more of those. And watch this, folks. Raise your hand if your highest color is yellow. Whoa. All right. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being with you today. That was not very nice of me. So here's what we're going to do. And I'm going to ask your grace in advance. I think you will find this information very powerful, but we're a large group, so I need you to be patient with how we're going to go about doing this. In just a moment, these lovely ladies that are helping me out, I'm going to put you in color-like groups with your highest color, okay? So if you are tied for high color, I want you to come down to the stage and see me, and I'll tell you if I want you to join, okay? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to be in groups of 8 to 10 people, all right? With all of them the same high color that you have. So you'll gather in various spots that I will direct you to in just a moment. I'm going to give you a packet of information that tells you more about yourself than you ever wanted to know. It's going to tell you how you behave. It's going to tell you what you value in this world. It's going to tell you what makes you successful at work. It's going to tell you the negative ways other people see you. So you got to have a little bit of a thick skin, okay? But it's also going to tell you the positive ways that you are viewed. It's going to tell you what people see when they watch you, what they hear when they listen to you. And you're going to have a few minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, to read through this packet together with your small group. And what you are looking for as you read is the characteristics that almost everybody in that group says is true. So you'll need your writing utensil with you, and you might have one person that chooses to read for the group. You read it, the first characteristic here says romantic. If most of the people in that group say, yeah, I'm pretty romantic, you would circle that for the group, okay? So everybody's looking for the characteristics that best represent your color. Any questions on that? So you're reading it together, circling those things that stand out for almost, because remember, you're all four colors. So not everything in the packet is going to resonate. So look for those things that resonate with most people in your group. Now why do you need to know those? Because then I'm going to give you 4 or 5 minutes for you to figure out how you would show the rest of the room what your color is all about. Now not everybody's going to have to present, but everybody needs to be prepared to, okay? So, what does that look like? It doesn't look like standing here reading it. That's not going to work. That's way too time-consuming and way too boring. But you might do a poem. You might change the words of a song. You might do a little skit where one person is the principal, who's one color, and the staff is a different color, or a teacher, etc. Don't worry about that part right now. First, I just want you to learn about your color and what's the priority. Before you leave today, you will have all 4 color packets, okay? You can't copy them, but you will have all 4. But right now, I just want you to learn about your color and figure out an easy way to communicate to the rest of this room the primary tenets of what it means to be that color. upper left corner over there. I'm going to ask my oranges to gather in the upper right corner over there. I'm going to ask my blues to gather in this section over here, and the very first part of this section. And I'm going to ask my yellows, this section and this section. Go to your area and you will start looking at the materials.
You know everything you need to figure out. I think there'd be a better way. They said, do this. Sure, it's a big deal.
Let me have your attention, please. Once you have your packet, please sit in an area for 6 to 10 other people. You're going to kind of have to turn yourself a little bit, and I want you to talk through the packet. You're looking for things that stand out for the whole group. So ladies, if you want to have a seat, you can use this area right here.
Maybe all his hands are over, he just sent them out or something. Regardless, the speed of such an operator would be 10 years ahead of what we are. And obviously, I would like to get what we paid for inside of these things, but we have to make it work. We have to make it work. to get to this is to pay $3,000 extra a year. Is that possible? When was the last time the hosts were down? Let's say just for hoops and cracks that's permanently fixed. How often will the host ever go? Never. Okay. Then I want to have the security, but you have to make something work. That makes sense.
First of all, if someone is feeling like what they're reading is not a good, accurate description of them, now remember you're all four colors, but it should be resonating pretty well with you. If you're in a group and it doesn't, please come see me. It's possible that we did the assessment backwards or something like that. So make sure you're all comfortable that it is sounding like you. 2, you should be on the second or third page of the packet. If you're not, you're going to have to move just a little bit faster. Okay? Thank you. Yes. you're having a medical problem, and this color pill is going to solve your problem, and this is going to give you all these traits. Or you do a job interview with two people, and one person represents the trait and the other one doesn't, okay? Whatever you want to come up with, just to pull a few of the main characteristics. You do not have to cover the whole packet. So the best way to start is to ask your group, well, what have we learned? What really stands out for our color? How are we going to communicate that to the rest of the room? Okay? You have about 5 minutes, not much time at all. Thank you. Your job now is to sit back and see what you can learn about what it means to be the other colors. I already know how I stressed out each of your groups. You do not need to inform me of that. I'm very aware who had trouble because I didn't give enough details, who had trouble because the time constraints were for all I got all that. So we're going to now learn what your color is all about, okay? We are going to start with yellow. So our first yellow group, come on up, or do it from there, whatever you want to do. But it's got to be loud enough for this whole room to hear. Do you need the microphone? No? Okay. Sit back and see what you can learn about what it means to be yellow. First of all, we need to remember that whatever happens in the next 15 minutes cannot be held against you for longer than 2 weeks past the date of this conference, okay? Secondly, we are not filming because I don't want any of it on TikTok or Facebook or any of that. However, after listening to that, I almost regret having that rule because I think it looks good. All right, so they brought out some new words. Let me reinforce what it means to be yellow. Yellow are incredibly organized in structure. They love details. In fact, yellows also love a to-do list. You know that list where you put things down that you still have to do? Yellows love their to-do list so much that at the end of the day, they will put things on the to-do list that they've already done just to have the pleasure of checking it off the list. Yes. Your yellows are very reliable and dependable. They will, when they learn something, they will implement it with reliability and validity. So your yellow teachers that might be going through the letters training, they are going to implement that letters training with reliability and validity every step of the way. They are never once going to stop and see if it helps children learn to read, but they are going to implement it like they were taught to implement. Your yellows are the ones that want to go to a meeting that has an agenda. Why are we having a meeting if there's no agenda? And they want you to follow that agenda. If you're in a meeting with yellows and they're on agenda item number 2, and you should be so foolish as to raise your hand and ask a follow-up question to agenda item number 1 that we've already closed out, or jump ahead to agenda item number 4 that we haven't gotten to, your yellows are going to do 3 things. They are going to roll their eyes at you. They are going to sigh deeply. And then they are going to spend the next 2 days trying to figure out who raised you and how to possibly. Your yellows are rule followers. They always follow the rules. And in their spare time, they're watching to see if you're following the rules. Because they have a very strong sense. They have a very strong sense of fairness and justice. So they are paying attention. And should you be in a situation where you find no rule is present, a yellow is more than happy to find a rule. Your yellows are the ones that I need to remind. The reason I do this work is to help us understand all personality types. It is not to try to convince everyone else to be your color. Yellows. Because yellows would be very happy if the whole world became yellow like that. Your yellows are most highly represented in the world of education. There are more teachers and administrators are yellow than any other color. So the majority of educators fall into that. That's not true. I do this in the corporate world too, and it's not true in all professions. But in education, the majority of teachers and educators and administrators are yellow. Let's hear it for our yellow group. Where's my first? We're going to do 2 blue groups, actually. First blue group, you're up. Yes. let's now hear from our greens, our green group over here. Now, while we're walking up here, let me tell you about the blues in a little more detail. So, what does it mean to be blue? Your blues are very people-oriented people. They will also get the job done, just like yellows do, but they're really not all that interested in the job. They're interested in the connection they can make to people. It's true. They're interested in the connection they make with people while they're doing their job. Blues are not going to do well in a cubby with numbers all day long. They have to connect to other people. Blues get their joy from taking care of other people. When I encourage educators to take care of themselves, I never say to a blue, you have to take care of yourself before you take care of other people, because that would actually stress them out. They get their joy from taking care of other people. Blues wear their emotions on their sleeves. They're very likely to start to cry at a Hallmark movie. Right after they start crying, they're going to start apologizing. And the reason for that is because the other three colors are not very tolerant of all their emotions. And they learn that it bothers you when they cry, and there's nothing worse for a blue than to feel like they're doing something that upsets you. So they'll immediately start to cry and then apologize. So if you want to give a gift to a blue, the best gift you can give them is to say, your tears don't hurt me. It's okay for you to have your feelings. It's all right, okay? All right. Blues get along best with all four color categories. Why? Because they will change themselves to match what your color is and what you need. Because they are about harmony. Blues do not like conflict. They will do anything to avoid having conflict. Let's hear it again for our blues. We have a microphone. Pass it. All right, nice and loud. We're going to see what it means to be green. Whoa, that's definitely not loud enough, so use the mic. Here we go.
Here is an overview of green. I set high expectations. I am very investigative. Seeks the big picture. Enlivened by work. Needs independence and private time. Varied for thought. Ingenious and inventive. Inquisitive. Conscientious.
Conceptual and insightful.
All right, good job. Excellent. So, what does it mean to be green? Here's what we know it means to be green. First of all, to be green, they are highly intelligent. They are the most intelligent of the four color groups. They know and they would love for you to know it as well. In fact, they love to go home and post on their refrigerator after they've been through my training that they are right the largest percentage of time. Now, the reason they're right the largest percentage of time is because greens are highly analytical. They study everything, and they are not risk takers. So they don't talk about things unless they've already checked them out to be sure they're accurate. They don't just talk about their feelings or opinion or whim. They only talk about what they know to be accurate. If you only talk about what you know to be accurate, guess what? That means you're going to increase the percentage of how often you're right. Greens are very visionaries. They have to see the purpose in something. They're going to get the job done too, but only after you show them the why. Only after they understand the logic behind it. They are not going to just do a to-do list for the purpose of doing a to-do list. There's got to be information about why every single time. They often are the quietest in the room, but when they speak, they usually have a really profound something to add. And while I'm finishing with the greens, my orange group can make your way down, please. We're going to do it from there? Okay. All right. Just stay right there and we'll finish up with greens. So, your greens are very intelligent. We have the least represented color of green in the world of education. Why? Because they can get paid a whole lot more money for that intelligence in other fields, such as medicine veterinarian, technology, dentistry, etc. So when we do thankfully have greens, it is because they have another high color and they want to bring that to the education world. You're feeling the stress of us not having a lot of green because about 15 years ago, greens from outside our profession started looking and saying, yes, but is what you're doing really working for children? And that's where the push for standardized testing came from. And whether or not it went too far the other way is a discussion on a different day. But your greens, if you're struggling with to know what to do with data, your greens will be able to help you with that. Your greens are very analytical and will look at that data and figure out what to do with it. All right, let's hear it for our greens. All right, we have one more color, and that is orange. Oranges, tell us what it's like to be orange, please. Nice and loud. We came in like a rainbow! Perfect! Perfect!
We had something else though too. We did have something else. We kind of correlated orange maybe to if you had ADHD as well. We were wondering if this group was predominantly ADHD. We also had a little acronym with orange. Orange is for organized, realistic, risk takers, action-oriented, we love to negotiate, we have great endurance, we are efficient and spontaneous.
Excellent, thank you, oranges. I'm going to take a little bit of issue with one of those words. Your yellow is sneaking in there a little bit because oranges are generally not organized. If you're organized, it's because you have that yellow color playing out too. So, greens, if we have greens in our profession, it's at the secondary level where we started to break out into things like science and math, etc. Now, oranges, here's what you need to know about oranges. Oranges are the life of the party kind of people, folks. If you want to have some fun, it's going to be your oranges. And in fact, I want every single person in this room to have some orange in their life. Because in case you it's my fault, I let him loose. Because, folks, in case you need to be reminded, this life that we have on this planet, this is not a dress rehearsal. We don't get to come around and do it again. You get one shot. So you need to be having some fun in that life when you're doing it too. Now, oranges are very spontaneous. They are risk takers. They're the ones that are willing to jump out of a perfectly good flying airplane just for the fun of it. They're going to be on the roller coaster, at the blackjack table, etc. They like risk and they like chance. Oranges have no filter. If it comes into their head, it's coming out of their mouth. You can't expect it to be any different. Oranges do not like rules. The first thing they told me was, I'm going to get up there and read this packet, the way that you just said 3 times we're not supposed to do, because we don't follow rules. They don't like rules. If they have a high amount of yellow in their personality, they will push back against that rule until it bends. But if they don't have a high yellow, they're going to push back against it until it breaks. Okay? Oranges are definitely going to be creative about what they do. If you give them a to-do list, they're going to look at it and say, well, maybe I'll do number 2, and if I feel like it, I'll do number 6. If you insist that they do the whole thing, then they're not going to do it in order. They're going to start with number 8, and then go down to number 4, etc. Now, in 2023, the highest percentage of students are orange. Now, your blues, as I told you, get along best with everyone. So let's hear it for our oranges. Your blues get along best with everyone. So your blues, well, if they're with yellows, they'll become very structured and organized. If they're greens, they'll become analytical and thoughtful. And if they're with oranges, hold on to your hats. You put those 2 groups together, that's your social committee right there. But there are 2 colors. There are 2 colors that struggle the most with getting along. You want to guess which 2 colors they are? Yellow and orange. Now, the highest percentage of teachers and administrators are yellow. The highest percentage of students are orange. Welcome to the stress of your world, folks. We're setting it up this way. So, I'm going to teach you one word today that truly could change And my yellow teachers are phenomenal. Once they understand that that's the concept, they will start changing the way they do things in the classroom and always provide choice. You can have 2 to-do lists. You don't have to have just one. Have A and B and give them a choice. In fact, the research backs this up even academically. When you finish a unit and you want to get your children to take an assessment on that unit, you create 2 tests, identical tests. The questions are identical, but you mix up the order. And you give them a choice. Today, do you want to take test A or test B? The research shows us they will perform 5 to 7 percentage points higher because they had a choice. Why? Because they want to prove themselves right. They want to believe that they picked the easier of the 2. So they work harder on that. And they're not boxed into a corner. When I'm working with a teacher with classroom management, she says the kids are talking too much. Instead of going up to them and saying, you need to move, I walk up to these 2 kids and I say, the talking is really distracting. Do you want to stay here or move to another seat? 99 times out of 100, they're going to say, I'll stay right here. 100 times out of 100, they're going to keep talking. So I go back to them a second time, but I still provide choice. But I change the choice now. I say the talking is still distracting. Do you want to move over there or over there? A large percentage of the disciplinary situations we get into are because you're boxing the kids in. When you learn to be able to do it with choice, it makes a tremendous difference. Now, I find this information very helpful for all relationships. I might even credit myself for saving a couple marriages this morning. Thank you very much. But here's my question for you. So I do this. When I was a principal, I would do this with every one of my faculty. And after we did it, I bought their ID lanyards in their primary color. So when you're walking around, you can tell what color you were talking to. Now, why would that be important? Because when I'm walking down the hall on Monday morning, I'm coming into work and I'm a yellow, what's on my mind? My to-do list. I have to make 6 copies, I have to call this parent, and I have to be at my duty station in 2 minutes and 22 seconds, okay? But now I pass a green. Now that green is also in their head. They're analyzing their last lesson, they're visualizing what they're doing later, so we kind of smile at each other, barely acknowledge each other, keep walking, not a problem at all. But now I'm a yellow walking down the hall, and I barely acknowledge that blue that I just walked by. Now, one of 2 things is going to happen for that blue. That blue is going to spend the next 20 minutes trying to figure out what they might have done to ourselves. And if they have figured out, well, I didn't see them, I haven't seen them lately, it can't be about me, then what they're going to decide is that you must be having a really bad day. And they're going to go back to their room and write you a nice little note to pick up your spirits. Whereas had I known I was passing a blue, I could change that situation in 10 seconds. I could say to them, hey, good morning, how was your weekend? In reality, I don't even have to stick around to hear the response. All I have to do is acknowledge them, okay? When I worked with my school improvement plan teams, if we didn't have our ID lanyards, then I gave them an index card in a different color, because what color makes up most of your school improvement teams? Yellow. If your school improvement team is about yellow, your school improvement plan is going to be about policies, procedures, rules, etc. So I would say to them, today I need you to represent blue. Where are we paying attention to relationships and connections? I need you to represent orange. Where are we providing choice and opportunity? I need you to represent green. Where are we checking to make sure that what we're doing is actually working? So, while this is important in all areas, I want you to answer a question with your group. And while you're doing that, my wonderful volunteers are going to come around with your other 3 packets. And one reminder that you are not authorized to copy any. Just reach out to me if I can help you, okay? But here's the question I want you to answer in your group. Why did I put this work in a trauma training? How does this relate to the issue of trauma? So answer that question, and we're going to pass up the other packets. There are two reasons that I've added this to a trauma training. The first is when you understand where somebody is coming from, what color they are, you're much more likely to know what might be triggering to their trauma, okay? If there's a fight on the playground about rules, there's a good possibility the yellows are upset and the oranges are the one that broke it, okay? So you have that much better sense. See, we all respond to trauma differently. Every month you do a monthly fire alarm drill. Which color category initially has the biggest adverse effect to the fire alarm going off? Yellows. Because it's not on their to-do list, it's not on their schedule, and it throws them for a loop. However, yellows also recover the fastest because they immediately switch their brain to the list of what you're supposed to do when the fire alarm is going off. So they react quickly, but they recover quickly. The second color group that has the biggest response to the fire alarm going off would be blue. And they don't recover as fast until it's over and they know everybody's safe and everything is okay. Which color category is not likely to have a response to the fire alarm going off? Oranges. They probably pulled the fire alarm. So, part of the reason I put this in a training is because the better you understand. Now, you're not going to necessarily know every child's color if I give them an assessment. If they're having an emotional breakdown in your classroom, you can't say to them, hey, would you put those aside for just a minute and fill out this assessment for me so I can see what color you are? That doesn't work. But trust me when I tell you that when you start looking at the world through this lens, you're going to be able to quickly identify what color somebody might be by what you hear or what you see that they are doing. You're going to be able to determine that, okay? But the second most important reason that I put this into a trauma training is because, folks, I need you to understand very clearly. Education is not an employment agency for adults. We are a service agency to children. And as a result, being a service agency, it is our responsibility to change ourselves to match what they need, not the other way around. So if you are yellow and you don't like the concept of touch, but that child, that person that's having the meltdown is a blue that needs connection, you don't get to hold on to your feelings of not wanting to connect over feelings. And the opposite is also true. If I'm a blue and somebody's having a meltdown, what's my natural instinct? To hug them, talk to them, pat them on the back. But if they are not a blue, if they're a blue, that's the perfect thing to do. But if they're not a blue, I'm going to make their trauma worse. See, that's the deal. It's not just that not responding right isn't helpful. It's that it escalates the trauma further. If somebody's already having a trauma reaction and you try to respond to them in a way that is not what they need, you're not just not helping, you're actually making things worse. So I want you to begin to look at the world through this lens, and you will begin to understand. And again, if you need my help in actually doing the assessment with your kids, you're welcome to do that. You have been wonderful. Now I have to do, we're not quite done. I've got 2 more quick pieces we need to do. As you make your way back to your seats, please don't leave us unless you absolutely have to. This is not an excuse for people to leave, okay? Because I really want you to hear the last part as well. So go ahead and thank your partners and move on back to your original seats. My volunteers are going to be coming around with a lemon candy. A lemon candy. When you get it, hold on to it. Don't eat it just yet. Okay, my volunteers are coming around with a lemon candy. If you haven't already put it in your mouth, please don't eat it just yet. Hold on to it, we need it for a few minutes. If you've already put it in your mouth, it's okay. Just relax and enjoy it. All right. Please give me your attention again. Thank you so much. Have a seat. They're still coming around with the lemon candy, so if you get yours, just hold on to it for just a minute. All right, I made Dr. Green a commitment to be out by 8 p.m. and I'm going to stick with it, so let's get started, okay? So here we go, folks. There are two parts of trauma that I need you to understand. The first is the relationship piece, and that's why we did this True Colors work. I'm hoping you will find that very valuable as you move forward. But the second part, understanding trauma, is understanding the neurology of it. It's easy to think that the emotional breakdown that's happening in your class is the first sign of trauma, but it really isn't. The first sign of trauma happens neurologically. It's when your brain starts to feel like it needs to protect you. The better we get at recognizing what's going on with a child neurologically, the more we are able to help them, okay? The brain records all kinds of experiences in our life, both positive and negative. So when we're trauma informed, the first thing we do is we understand that there's a whole wide range of responses from trauma. The same event could be a post-traumatic stress response for some people and an absolutely nothing kind of response from someone else, okay? We also need to understand to build a variety of responses because it is so different. The range of how somebody might respond in an abnormal situation is very, very broad. So with that candy, I want you to understand how things are recorded in your brain. So let's say one of your families, unfortunately, had a really bad fight last night. It happened during dinner time. It got very violent, there was a bloody nose, the police were called, etc. And they were making tacos for dinner. And 2 weeks later, a student walks into the cafeteria at school and they're making tacos. The first thing that happens is the brain is going to remember the experience that that child had. And they're going to start to have a reaction to that, okay? So I want to show you how that works, because it works with both positive and negative things. So unless you have an allergy to lemons, please don't eat the lemon candy if you have an allergy to lemons. We don't want any real trauma here today. But if you can tolerate it, if you don't like it, you can spit it right back out. But for just a minute, I would like you to put the candy in your mouth and try to see where your brain takes you in terms of a memory with lemons, to the scent or the taste, okay? So for some of you, if you grew up in the South, what you might be thinking about with the lemons is you might be imagining your mom or your grandma making big batches of sweet tea, and they're cutting up lots of lemons to put in there. For others of you, if you've had toddlers in your life, you might be remembering the first time in the restaurant where you took that piece of lemon out of your water and you gave it to the toddler to taste, and their face got all scrunched up and funny, and then you're such a caring, compassionate adult, you did it again because you forgot to take a picture the first time. So that taste could record differently for different people. Now I told you as a trauma training I use real examples of trauma. So I'd like to sit back while you're thinking about how that taste is coming across to you, and I want to share with you one child's experience with trauma and lemons. And because it is trauma, I want you to remember to take care of yourself and take a nice deep breath as you need to when you listen. Very early in my childhood, I learned that to cry was the equivalent of committing some type of heinous act. In the natural world, a child relies on crying from the moment of birth to communicate discomfort, pain, hunger, loneliness, and every other emotion. But in my world, crying was removed as an option for expressing any experience or emotion. Because crying is such a natural reaction, snuffing it from a child's experience requires many long hours of lessons. The edge of a knife slowly slices along the palm of my hand. I feel the sharp pain instantly. The drops of blood well up until they pool and then spill between my fingers. My brain is fully aware of the experience and my eyes want to tear up, but for every tear that falls from my eye, there will be another slice across my hand. I cannot stop the tears and I feel the wetness on my cheek. Can I discreetly wipe it with my shoulder without him noticing? Of course not, because he is staring and watching intently for any sign of weakness. Another slice across the palm, another tear escapes. After a while, we have to switch to the other palms. It has become too challenging to see where to cut through the pool of blood. I'm not sure how much time has passed, but if I concentrate on how much my legs hurt from standing here this long, perhaps I will not notice what it feels like as the knife cuts into me. I did it! A full slice across the center of my palm, and not one tear escaped. I look at my father with a sense of pride and a craving for any sign of approval. He nods and takes the knife over to his workbench. Both of my hands are burning, and I know I have a mess to clean up from the blood that spilled on the floor. But inside, the familiar, small sense of relief for having survived another lesson begins to grow. My father reaches into a paper bag on the bench. I cannot see what he has in his hand, but I see him pick up the knife again. I smell it before I see it, the pungent smell of a fresh cut lemon. He walks toward me, barking orders to hold out my hands. He grabs one hand and begins to squeeze the lemon juice, spilling it into each of the cuts. The sting seems to start at the very top of my head and burst through every nerve in my body. Multiple tears fall from my eyes, and the lessons begin again. Now please take a nice deep breath, because you just witnessed someone else's trauma. And when you witness someone else's trauma, your body feels it too. So I want you to think about this little girl showing up in school 2 weeks later, 2 months later, 2 years later, and walking into the cafeteria and they're doing it. What do you think is going to happen in that moment? Her brain is going to have a reaction. And what I'm hoping for her is that she has trauma-informed adults in her life. Not adults that are saying, what's wrong with you? Get the line moving. Keep going. Why are you slowing things up? But instead, they're curious. They want to understand what might be going on for that child. About 300 years ago, when I was in my council preparation program, yes, I told you I was old, they said, don't ever ask people to question why, because it makes them defensive. I would argue that we're intelligent enough to be able to ask the question why without making somebody defensive. And I think why is a really valuable question. Because why communicates that I want to understand, that I want to know you, that I want to know what's going on before I make any decisions. So I think why is an important question. And I'm hoping that people are curious and I want to understand the why of what's going on with that child. Let me share a quick example with you. When I was living in South Carolina, it was 2 weeks before Christmas, and my son was 8 years old. And I sent him up to the front gate to get the mail from me. Now, he was gone longer than he should have been. That's red flag number 1 for long. When he came back, he had a stack of mail in one hand, and he had a closed fist for his other hand. That's red flag number 2. But I'm looking at him thinking, okay, whatever creature he has in there is no bigger than his hand. I can handle it for sure. So I said to him, honey, what do you have in your hand there? And he opened it up, and he had 8 quarters. Quarters, money. Now, I've been going to the mailbox a lot in my lifetime. And I've never once gone to the mailbox and come back with mail in one hand and money in the other. So I'm immediately suspicious. I said, honey, where'd you get that money when you went to get the mail? He said, Mom, I stopped at the neighbor's house and I sold them Christmas carols. I said, you did what? He said, I stopped at the neighbor's house and I told them I would sing them Silent Night if they paid me 50 cents. Now, I come from a counseling background, so I'm not real excited that my son was trying to make a profit off Silent Night. But before I jumped all over him, I looked at him and I said, honey, why did you do that? And he said, because, Mom, tomorrow when we go to Walmart, I want to have my own coins to put in the red kettle. I know, isn't that sweet? You wouldn't recognize 11-year-old. I'm just kidding. He's a wonderful man. Now, I still had to have a conversation with him about selling Silent Night, but was the conversation different because I understood the why? It was very different. And I want you to always be curious about the why. Before we jump in with the rules, with the consequences, do we understand the why? It doesn't mean that we're not going to have consequences. Consequences are for every behavior. But here's the golden rule, folks. The relationship before the rule. The relationship always comes before the rule. Yeah, we're going to put consequences in place, but what are we also doing to protect the relationship when we put those consequences in place? Why am I passionate about this work? Why is this so important to me? Why do I feel so honored to be with you today? This, folks, this case study we looked at earlier, that's my history. I'm the little girl that was locked in the basement on Friday until Monday. I'm the little girl that was raped by her father until I got pregnant at 11. I'm that girl that was homeless at 15 years old. And I only have the honor to be standing here with you today because of people like you. The educators in my life saved my life. I wouldn't be here if it were not for them. Gifts that you give to your kids that you don't even realize you're giving them. My educators didn't know what was going on in my home, and had they known, they wouldn't have been able to fix it. And I know I got a lot of fixers in this room. We're not going to be able to fix all of the circumstances that our kids come from. But you still can save their life. And the way you do that is you give them enough of a relationship during the day that they have resilience to survive what they're facing at night. And that's what happened to me. I had people that saw me. You see, I didn't look like a checklist. I was a straight A student because I was terrified. If I took a wrong answer home, it was going to be a broken bone. So I was a straight A student. I was never going to have an emotional outburst at school. I was absolutely following every rule and making sure I was not in trouble. I was in school every day that I could be because I'd rather be in school than in that house. I'd rather be in school than on that street corner. So my attendance was not an issue. So I didn't look like a checklist. And I want you to understand that you have children in your care that don't look like a checklist either. And the only way we can know what's going on is when we're paying attention to that relationship piece. If you would be so kind, I would like to share one last piece with you before we are done. And that is that you have a lot of children that live in unstable housing situations. They are either homeless or moving around. And with the world the way it is, that's happening more and more frequently. So I'd like to share one more piece with you. And that is, before I get to that, I'm going to share with you that a couple of years ago, I made the decision to partner my personal experience with trauma with my professional experience, and I produced my book, Piece by Piece, my trauma narrative. Now, should you decide you want to read this book, I want you to practice really good self-care, because it can be a difficult book to read. The first half of the book are all of my childhood experiences shown through the lens of a child. The Lemons chapter you read was one example of that. The second half of the book was the 20-plus years of therapy that it took to get me to where I am. See, that's the second gift that you're giving your children. You're giving them the gift of an education. Because no matter what they're going through as children, they're going to need to process it again later as adults. And that takes resources. The only way, I'm going to pause for a minute while you calculate out mentally in your mind the cost of 20-plus years of therapy. I could only do that because I had an education that provided me with a job that had resources so I could pay for that. So when you're giving your kids an education, you're also giving them that opportunity. If you choose to read the book, you're welcome to get it through Amazon or all the usual places. I also have some here today. It's $20 if you choose to purchase it. I donate proceeds to domestic violence and child abuse agencies. If you choose to get it through Amazon, that's fine, but trust me, they donate nothing. So. The second passion that I have that I want to make you aware of, just so you know though, is once I started doing this work, I noticed that we've got a serious problem, a second serious problem in the world of education. The first one I mentioned is all the needs that are coming to us. The second problem we have is we're burning you out. We are burning out the very people who are taking care of the children who need the most. And when my book came out, Piece by Piece, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Eric Gentry, who is a research psychologist. He is the strongest green I've ever met in my life. He researches everything. and he works in the area of law enforcement and healthcare. So he works in 2 other service agencies. He spent 30 plus years studying the effect of trauma and stress on people who work in service industries. And as I said, we're not an employment agency for adults, we're a service agency of children. So you're feeling stress and trauma in a different way than the average person out there. Mechanics, bankers, grocery stores, all of them have stress in their life, but it's a different kind of stress than what you have. And therefore, you have to take care of yourself differently. So he has a 5-step research-based model on how people who work with taking care of others have to take care of themselves differently to survive. And he called me up and he said, hey, I read your book and it's very powerful. He said, I work in law enforcement and healthcare. I don't know education. But a lot of the educators are calling me up and they're saying, we're suffering from compassion fatigue. We're burning out. We're in trouble. And he said to me, is that true? And I said, duh, no, I did not say that. I'm so rude if I said that. I said, it's absolutely true. And he graced me then with the opportunity. He said, would you partner with me and be lead author and release my research through the lens of educators? So I put together with him this book called Forward Facing for Educators, and I do this trauma training as well in how you take care of yourself. I use 5 characters: a beginning teacher, an experienced teacher, a principal, a counselor, and a school secretary. But it doesn't matter if you don't fit into one of those roles, you're going to still hear the same kinds of things. So I again invite you, if you want that book, it's available on Amazon. I have some with me today. I donate to beginning educators. But here's why I need you to take care of yourself. I want to share this story with you so that you understand how important your work is that you're doing every single day. When I was 15, my parents divorced. Shortly after the divorce, my mother remarried. My mother's new husband lived about 90 minutes away in a small mobile home. He told my mother that after they were married, he would not have room for her to bring both my younger brother and me to live with him, and she had to make a choice. Because my brother was only 12, she chose to take him with her, and I became homeless. My father, when he felt I deserved it, paid the $100 monthly child support payment directly to me, and I offered it to the people I would stay with as compensation for any trouble I might have given to their lives. Often, I could sense I was an intrusion to the families who let me sleep on their couch or in their basement, so I continued trying to be as still and quiet and as invisible as possible. The Penobscot River ran through our town, and I always loved being near water. To this day, water calms me and brings me peace as it did back then. So often, I would find myself sleeping under this bridge that connected our town to a small island. I felt safe under the bridge, and I could just watch the water until I fell asleep. Additionally, I was not being a problem or an inconvenience to anyone when I was under the bridge. At 16, I purchased a yellow 65 Dodge Dart with money that I had earned while babysitting. I was fortunate to have some people take me in. In the warmer months, I would sleep in my car, but in Maine, there are not many warm months. The custodian at the high school was a wonderful man, and he would leave the locker room door ajar for me at night so I could sneak in there to sleep on really cold nights and get a fresh shower when I needed it. During this time of homelessness, I had a small dog, Billy, who was also homeless. She went with me everywhere. She was a wonderful companion and kept me company on whatever couch I was on or curled up under the bed. It is challenging to describe how insignificant I felt as a human being when I slept in places where I never belonged. Now, because you work with a lot of children who are displaced and not living and sleeping in their own bed every night, I want to repeat that sentence. It is challenging to describe how insignificant I felt as a human being when I slept in places where I never felt like I never belonged. But Billy always kept me focused and grounded, and when I felt like I mattered to no one, she would curl up on my lap and lick my face, reminding me I definitely mattered to her. One winter holiday, I found myself with no place to stay. The school was locked, and everyone had gone away for the holiday. It was especially cold, and staying outside was not an option, as I knew both Billy and I would be in danger of freezing to death. The family camp we had in the nearby lake had burned to the ground, and my father was rebuilding into a home. As you can imagine, I had no desire to go be with him, but I truly felt I had no option. So Billy and I hitchhiked and walked our way the 10 miles to my father's house. He did agree to let me stay for the week, for an agreed upon $25 of rent from my child support money. I hoped that he would be at work, and I was grateful that we would not freeze to death. Money was very tight for me. I usually earned money through babysitting, and I had a babysitting job on a Saturday at the end of the week that I stayed at my father's house. When I got back from the job, I walked into the house and my father was eating dinner at the table. I looked under the table to greet Billy because that's where she would be if someone was eating dinner, and she was not there. My father had recently installed a large sliding glass door. I walked over to the door and opened it and hollered for Billy because I was sure she was outside, but she did not come. "She's not here," my father yelled at me. It's been 8 or 9 years since my father had done anything abusive to an animal, but in that moment, my heart seemed to stop, and flashes of horrible memories came flooding back. My father told me to look down at the glass door, and when I did, all the air left my body, and I could not breathe as I saw the chew marks on the casing of this newly installed door. I took her to the shelter in Bangor. I told them to put her down. I told them she had bitten 2 people and she was violent and had to be put to sleep. I ran to the phone book and I began searching for the number. I called, but it was Saturday evening and they were closed. I could only hope that I could reach them in time. The next morning, I left my father's house and I hitchhiked and walked the 20 miles to Bangor. It was dark when I arrived and the shelter was closed, but I searched through the windows and I listened carefully to try and hear Billy's bark. I slept under a rug outside the kennel and was waiting there when they opened Monday morning. The person who got there first was very kind to me and explained that Billy had already been put to sleep. It may seem odd to say this, given the history of the experiences that I had earlier in my life, but in that moment, I honestly felt the most broken I had ever been. I walked away from the shelter and did not even know what direction to go. My heart was in pieces, and the loneliness washed over me like a tsunami. Without any awareness or planning, I made my way back to my hometown and found the locker room door ajar for me again, since school was now back in session. The custodian had saved me once again. As he had done several times in the past, he had left some food in my locker, along with a note. "Didn't see you today. Someone left a box. It's in the first shower stall. Stay warm." I went to the shower stall and found a box with a few items of clothing that I had left at my father's house. He also put my child support check in the box as well. The check was written for $10 and included a piece of paper indicating $25 had been subtracted for 1 week's rent and $65 was subtracted for the fee to put Billy to sleep. The note also said there would be no payment for the next 3 months to cover the cost of the repair of the door. The last item in the box was Billy's blue dog collar. I slowly walked back to my locker and got out my peanut butter sandwich and my books to begin reading the assignments that I had missed that day. As I held Billy's collar in my hand, my heart felt so heavy I had to work just to keep breathing. Please take a nice deep breath with me. Thank you for being able to tolerate my story. I know it isn't easy to hear. Take that nice deep breath so you take care of yourself, because when you hear other people's trauma, it impacts you too. I want to thank you, sincerely thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I'm only alive because of people like you. 3 gifts that you have to give your kids. First is the relationship you give them during the day, because you don't know what they're dealing with at night. The second is you're giving them an education, so they will have the resources to a future. And the third gift that I want to thank you for is I want you to understand that if I can go from sleeping under that bridge to having the opportunity to be in front of this amazing group of people today, we should never, ever limit the potential of the future for our kids. The past does not determine what their future might be. I want to thank you for what you give to your children every single day, and I wish you the very best this school year. Thank you so much.
Yes, so Lindley, next time, Kleenex to go around. In all seriousness, I can't tell you how much I appreciate Cheryl Fuller being willing to be with us today and share her story. Would you please stand up and give this lady a big round of applause? I know that we talked before, and we certainly understand the types of things that you encounter and see and hear. Oftentimes, you know a lot more than parents or family members or other people do. And for that, I appreciate you and thank you for the work that you do for students. And that's what we're all about here. The Polk Schools family is to be a family, and that's for our students as well. And I appreciate you guys. I've heard and can give you countless examples over my years of people who have provided a home, provided clothing, provided food, all the different needs that kids have, you guys have done. And it's not fair to you necessarily, and it's certainly not on your job description. But I appreciate the fact that you care enough to do it, and that you care enough to come this morning with open minds and open hearts and listen to this great story from this lady who overcame so much, and know that that may be one of the kids in your room. So thank you for what you do. We really appreciate you being here today, Cheryl. Thank you once more. So we do have some more afternoon activities for you. Totally joking. Don't forget, we have our flu shots out there if you did not